people who made this Exergy school possible. First and foremost, Professor Dinser, and the student organizers, the organizing committee. I know you've done a lot of work, and this was really, I think, an outstanding week, very productive week, very informative. So why don't we all give them a round of applause? Second thing I'd like to say is it's been a real pleasure for me personally to see so many of the distinguished speakers that have come on the different topics that they've presented, and I've read about their papers in the past, that I knew of them, and just the opportunity to meet them and speak with them, that was a real thrill for me. The third thing I wanted to say is more just on a personal note, and something that I would convey to the young researchers, the junior, the graduate students, the postdoctoral researchers that have their careers ahead of them and want to do innovative research. I would like to say that really I think entropy and the second law has immense potential for you to be able to do innovative research. It's one of those areas that is really untapped, so to speak. Although many researchers have worked on it for decades, there is still so much untapped potential and ability that entropy and the second law and Exergy has. If you look at conventional energy systems, fluid mechanics and heat transfer, these are very mature areas, and people have studied them for hundreds of years, and there have been a lot of developments, but when you look at entropy and the second law, it just has not reached its potential in various applications. Many of the things that we talked about at this workshop, people have made significant advances, but in some ways they've just scratched the surface. So maybe I'll just give a few reflections on my experiences over the past. I've been working in the area for about 20 years, entropy and the second law. And if I just go through the areas that I've worked in, that I've seen so much potential, back in the early 90s, I was working on my master's degree on computational fluid dynamics and compressible flow. And the opportunity to use entropy in the second law was thinking outside of the box. How can you use entropy to determine numerical errors? How can you, for example, if you have negative entropy production that your CFD code calculates, it has some non-physical meaning. You can use it as a correcting mechanism in your CFD calculations, and a lot of opportunity in CFD which is untapped. We heard one of the previous speakers was talking about materials, in fact, two previous speakers. Think about materials processing. Here's another area where you have solidification, you have crystals, they're being aligned in grain structures. Not a lot of work on how entropy and the second law relates to those processes, but it is really tied to thermodynamics, the irreversibility, the grain structures, all of this relates back to thermodynamics. And there's another exciting area for you to look at. There have been many other areas that researchers have talked about. In my presentations, I gave presentations about using experimental methods to determine areas of irreversibilities, microfluidics applications. So, if you are, if you're looking at some problems in your research and you've really reached a dead end and you're not able to figure out what's happening, you have this tool over here called Exergy, the second law, that has really immense amount of power and ability that would allow you to look at problems in a different way that you haven't looked at them before. And I guess the last thing that I would say is that it's inevitable that this is the area where future breakthroughs are going to be coming, because energy systems today, these days, you've seen the presentations, are so complex. And they're oftentimes, they have solid, good efficiencies. But the only way, really, that engineers, in my opinion, are going to be able to reach those upper levels of theoretical performance, to get the last few percentage points of improvement, are going to be through Exergy, entropy, and the second law. Other methods have been, by and large, exhausted, so in many different regards, when you go forward in your future careers, that really entropy and the second law and Exergy are really something that I hope you've gained from this workshop, will serve you well in the future, and I'd encourage you to get the journals out that we've been talking about, International Journal of Exergy, and the books that our distinguished presenters have written on the subject, many books. Really, I'd recommend you to go to the library, get those, and that's all that I'd like to say. Thank you again. Everything.
Since you want to close by 6 o'clock, and I'd like to actually just maybe quickly seek some opinions from the audience, and maybe wrap it up with my own closing remarks here. Yes? As long as you do it a little louder, that would be fantastic.
The Riders of Capital Engineers like to thank the speakers, organized participants for this informative week, and we look forward to applying this new tool to our field